About 2 weeks ago, I showed a first phase of an integration between Illuminated Cloud and Salesforce DX. At the time, I mentioned that I would be enhancing that through a series of subsequent releases, and I wanted to show some of the progress that I've made, in particular making pretty much all the features of Illuminated Cloud work well with Salesforce DX projects. In order to accelerate this particular demo, I've gone ahead and checked out and created a new project based on the Salesforce DX Dreamhouse project from GitHub. It's pretty much the same process I showed in the last video, so if you want to take a look at that process, feel free to go back to that video and review it. I haven't made any changes whatsoever, other than I've associated this with a scratch org that I created against my hub org. And so the same thing holds, that you can see here that test sources are organized separately from other metadata. One thing I do want to point out here is that there's one other notable file system layout change between Salesforce DX and metadata API projects. And that is that the XML-based metadata files, so for example, .app, .object, .profile, .permission set, you can see here that .app is the way that shows up in the IDE. But if we take a look at it actually in the file system, you can see that it has a -meta.xml extension on it. And you'd be able to see the same thing on the other metadata types. So for example, objects, things like that. It's a small change, but it is a change, and it's something that you have to get accustomed to navigating back and forth. So one of the things that I've tried to do is make it such that if you're familiar with navigating a metadata API project, basically a traditional project, that it's really no different other than some of the flexibility that's given to you in terms of the organization of the directory structure. So .object files still look like .object files here. In the file system, they still have the meta XML extension on them, but you will still find them, work with them exactly as you're accustomed to in your traditional projects. There also won't be that cognitive disconnect as you go back and forth between metadata API projects and Salesforce DX projects. Okay, so as I mentioned, I pretty much have all the features of Illuminated Cloud working with Salesforce DX projects, so let's actually demonstrate that. Let's begin by fetching some new metadata from the server, so we'll use retrieve. As you can imagine, the more flexible layout of the file system had to be accommodated with regard to the retrieve and merge capability, where it actually downloads the metadata into a separate area and then allows you to rationalize the org metadata with your local metadata. And so let's take a look at our retrieve here, and we'll go in and we'll actually add some things to the metadata subscription. Right now it's set up the metadata subscription only based on the things in the local file system. So we'll have it query into the scratch org, and you can see that all the metadata that's in the scratch org is present. I've added a few foldered metadata types, so let's go ahead and download those. So we'll download dashboards, documents, email templates. We'll only do the ones for Dreamhouse, and reports. So we have some Dreamhouse reports. We'll go ahead and add those to our metadata subscription, and as soon as this refreshes its view, we'll go ahead and retrieve those. And in fact, we'll retrieve only those. So we'll turn off local plus server so that we only see the things that are on the server, and we'll retrieve those directly into the local file system. Now, as soon as this gets done, I want to show you something in particular that's also changed, okay, and update our metadata subscription with documents. So documents, you may remember traditionally the name of the file in the file system is the name of the file that you actually added for the document. But now, for more consistency with actual metadata, you can see that the file has a .document extension. Illuminated Cloud is dynamically looking at the, you notice it opened as an image there, it's dynamically looking at the name attribute of the associated meta XML file and is inferring the file type off of the extension there. And so however you upload those, just as with static resource files, things like that, they'll be treated properly. So you can now work with these files just as if you were working with them in a metadata API project. You can retrieve, you can deploy. We'll go ahead and bring up the deployment dialog and take a look at that. And of course, you can do incremental deployment. So right now, we'll just say deploy this metadata. So taking a look at what's new, what's not, and it's only going to deploy the things that are newer in the local file system. And so, if I did a deploy after this, it should say that there's nothing to deploy because everything should be completely up to date. Now, one thing I do want to point out, there is right now an impedance mismatch between Illuminated Cloud's deployer and retriever and the CLI's deployer and retriever. Basically, it's push and pull capabilities respectively. And so if we drop down to the CLI at this point and said SFDX force source push, and I don't think I've set the the username to be default. If I did that, I'm pretty sure we'll see some conflicts here. And this is something I'm working. Yeah, this is something I'm working on with the Salesforce folks to try to figure out exactly how to make it such that external tools and the status is tracked automatically by the Salesforce DX CLI can be kept in sync with one another. With this build, that's not there yet. So if you wanted to push this, you could just do a -F on the end to do a force on it, and it would force that to deploy. So moving back over, so you've already seen that we have the ability to deploy, to retrieve. Let's take a look at some other features. So static resources. One of the nicer features of static resources is the ability to work with static resources as bundles. So I'll convert this static resources archive type static resource to a bundle, and you can see it was added to the resource bundles directory, where I can go and edit the source directly using the first class editors. And so let's just say that we modified this. Now, before I save it, let's go ahead and do a retrieve, and we'll do a retrieve on just this file. Sorry, there we go. Let's change to context and retrieve just this file, and we'll do a retrieve and merge. And what we should see is that one, we're going to compare it as the exploded directory structure of the static resource. So under resource bundles, we can see that leaflet's being compared that way. And then if I open this file, you can see that locally it has that modified comment header that I added. On the server, it doesn't have that yet. So let's go ahead and close that up. And I will save that, just Control S, and you can see it deploying down here, deployed in about 1.3 seconds. We'll retrieve this guy again, retrieve and merge, and we'll show that now that's been pushed to the server. There shouldn't be any differences whatsoever. So when the diff window opens, we'll take a look at the resource bundle, leaflet source, and no differences whatsoever. If we look at the entire file, you can see that the modified is actually there. So the point is that this is a Salesforce DX project, and I'm able to work with my static resources as resource bundles seamlessly. It just works. So those are some of the features that I've added. Of course, everything that I showed last time continues to work. The ability to run unit tests, the ability to view code coverage inline in the IDE, the tool windows. The one thing that I'll need to do is the thing that I showed when I dropped to the terminal, and that is to try to figure out how the status tracking of an external tool, in this case Illuminated Cloud, and the status tracking of the CLI can have a little bit better interaction with one another, so that they're not competing with one another in terms of who really owns that status. I think that's it, and I hope you find this useful. I'll be posting the build later today so that you can download it and play with it. Keep in mind that this is a pre-release build, and there are almost certainly some bugs in here that I'll continue to work through. I would appreciate any feedback that you have, constructive or otherwise, as you work through this, especially if you find any bugs. Thanks a lot.